So if you leave tonight feeling like you can have an informed conversation with your family, with your neighbors, with your city council person, we will have succeeded in our goal. Just a quick overview of Zoom. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a few control buttons down there. 3 important buttons to be aware of. The closed captioning option should offer you an AI-generated transcript of what's being shared this evening. And the second is the mute button. Please remain muted during the presentations. And then, of course, use the chat box to enter any questions, thoughts, or reactions that you might have throughout. And we will hold some time for discussion at the end with the larger group to have some conversation about the issues that we've discussed, brought up. So if you're experiencing any technical challenges throughout the meeting, please feel free to send me a direct message and I'll put my name and also my texting number in the chat box. So finally, also, as we get started, please feel free to write in the chat box your name and any organizational affiliation that you'd like to note. And that helps us to know who's in the room tonight, the virtual room. So at this point, I will hand it off to Mallory, who will introduce herself and the Housing Development Consortium, and she will lead our presentation tonight. Thank you, Mallory, and I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Celia. So I'm hoping that you see this big, lovely slide and that we can forward. And I'm just going to introduce myself, Mallory Van Abema with the Housing Development Consortium of Seattle King County. Really excited to be here with you all. And thank you so much for adjusting with us. I know we had to postpone this for 1 week. And so taking time out of your evening, regardless, is a huge commitment. And so we're so grateful you're here. We're so grateful you're here, especially because we're pushing this back 1 week and you adapted with us. So thanks for that. So I want to give a little overview of who the Housing Development Consortium is, or HDC. Maybe you're wondering who we are. We're a nonprofit membership association and we represent over 190 organizations working in the affordable housing and human service sectors within King County. Our association exists to serve our members, and in this context, we like to talk about the A's, the B's, and the C's. We're advocate, broker, and convener, and as an advocate, we represent the collective voice of our membership in the affordable housing movement. We also work hard to broker meaningful relationships that foster new business, create greater efficiencies, and amplify the efforts of our member base. Finally, we provide the platform for space and our members to interact, to share best practices, and to network as convening agents of the affordable housing sector. So now that you've gotten a bit better acquainted, I'm going to pass things over to Marty Koistra, who is our executive director at HDC, and he's going to share some grounding words with us to kick off the evening before we move further in. So Marty, I think you should be unmuted and take it away.
Well, thank you, Mallory, and thank you, Silje, for getting us started. I was actually looking through the list of folks that are attending, and somehow you managed to gather all the good people. This is an amazing crowd of folks. So thank you all for taking time. I'm not going to take a whole bunch of your time. Mallory asked me to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're trying to do related to supporting communities throughout King County. And what we've learned over the years, and we see this with ARCH, a regional coalition for housing on the east side that's been in place over 20 years, and SCIP, which is the South King County Housing and Homelessness Partners working in South King County. And I think Angela Sanfilippo might be with us this evening, who's the executive manager there. Is that there's some real value in working interjurisdictionally on something of this magnitude. When I talk about the affordable housing crisis that we had pre-pandemic, I sometimes call it a wicked problem. The scope and scale of the need is immense. It is universal in that it does not necessarily isolated in a community, in a jurisdiction or a region or even anywhere unique in the country. There is a widespread need for more affordable housing. Moreover, if you think about it from a global perspective, the United Nations believes that we need about $987 billion if we were to adequately house people worldwide. So this is a huge challenge for us. And we're not going to be talking about it at that global level tonight. We're going to be discussing what can be done in each of our communities and how can we support each other. And we're really thankful for the folks at NUHSA for stepping up and partnering with King County. And I believe Isaac is here with us, Sunari. I believe I saw Valerie from King County on board here, really providing leadership and support for how we can help you all as jurisdictions work more closely together and how we can support each other. One of the things, if we're truly honest and vulnerable, that we learned years ago, especially in our work in South King County, is being able to come to the table and admit that we don't have a ton of staff in our communities that can work on this issue. We don't have council members and others who have a lot of free time, normal their jobs and their contribution as electeds to dive into this. And when we do dive in, we find that the complexity of this issue as a wicked problem baffles us and sometimes really discourages us. And so we believe that by working together, we can rise above that. Let me just characterize for you some things that most of you already know. But in 2017, is that where we are in this world? Decades, yeah. So just a few years ago, King County launched the Regional Affordable Housing Task Force work. And if we were to eliminate those households who were cost burdened in 2017, excuse me, I've been Zooming all day and I'm running out of voice. If we were to house everyone who was cost burdened in 2017, cost burdening meaning households paying more than 30% of their income for their housing expense, we would need 156,000 homes at that point in time. That's a staggering number. When you break it down into what would happen with anticipated growth pre-pandemic, by the time we got to 2040, we'd be looking at the need for 244,000 homes. Those numbers are way too big for electeds to even comprehend or think about. And so Valerie and her team were really wise in suggesting that we look at it in a 5-year increment. And that 5-year increment said we needed 44,000 homes every 5 years in King County up until 2040. Again, still a staggering number. And so there is no way that any one jurisdiction can own solving this. There is no way that we as King County can solve it without every jurisdiction. And what we're seeing, even during this pandemic, the irony of this pandemic is that house prices are continuing to rise. They're rising excessively in Pierce County, some in Snoqualmie County. We have lost, just one last statistic to bore you in numbers, we've had a net loss of 112,000 affordable homes to households below 80% of area median income. Low income, very low income, and extremely low income households. It's not like they went away. Those units are still there. Those homes are still there. It's just that rent increases have pushed them out of the range of affordability. And so what we call naturally occurring affordable housing for households in that 30 to 50% area median income range are disappearing in King County at an alarming rate. All this to say is that there is no way we will get there without everyone working together. and that's advocating for resources and changing policies and practices in our communities and confronting the really hard, difficult conversations that we need to have. And we tend to couch these conversations in words like growth, words like density, words like where, zoning, upzoning, all of these things. And it's really important for us to be able to break those things down and make sure that we're all being very clear about what our challenges are and how we challenge each other in our neighborhoods and our communities. Because in the end, none of us can afford to allow code to hamper our ability to house everyone. And I know this is a difficult conversation, but we need to figure out how we can all work together to never allow anyone to shut out the opportunity and the access of housing to anyone else based on their income or any other thing that might differentiate us. And so these are the things that we are going to try to help you, support you in being able to do effectively, and how we can grow together as communities, and more importantly, as a region, to say that we are truly about all people living with dignity and safe, healthy, and affordable homes within communities of opportunity. Thank you, Mallory, Silje, and all the folks at NUHSA, King County, and HDC for putting this together, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your time.
Thank you so much, Marty. Ever the eloquent orator. Thank you. I want to give us an overview of what we're going to cover today. Are you seeing these red lines? Because I don't know if I can do anything about that. Well, as much as you can, just ignore those red lines because we're gonna push forward. So here's an overview. We're going to start a workshop with a quick series of poll questions just to get a gauge of who is in the room. We're going to move into what is affordable housing. So what are we talking about? Who does it serve? Who provides it? Do a little dive into understanding the need. So Marty highlighted some of those really high level, big level needs, looking at the current housing affordability environment, and then examine some of the local tools and conditions. We're going to do a high level journey of what's happening at the local level. And we're really grateful to have some of our partners from ARCH, Regional Coalition for Housing, King County DCHS, and Habitat for Humanity, who will present on their work in the Snoqualmie Valley region. So I'll shift then into staying informed and engaged, offering some time for discussion and resource sharing for community members, and we'll offer some quick tips for staying engaged in issues related to affordable housing at the local and regional levels, and those resources that our team at HDC has been developing with huge support from city staff members. So thank you to all the staff members. I see some familiar faces now. And then we're going to open up the room and shut the screen sharing down. Just this is a time to address any outstanding questions, share information, and hear more about your priorities for housing as participants in this workshop and members of community in the Snoqualmie Valley. And then finally, we're going to ask and just strongly encourage you to complete a participant survey. We really value your input, and before you leave this meeting, it will really help us to ensure that there was some level of learning that was accomplished this evening, and also it'll help us tailor kind of content for future workshops. So let's dive in. Okay, so I'm going to launch our first poll questions. Just intends to help us get a sense of who's joining this evening and your individual comfort level with the topics that we're diving into. So let's see, poll question coming now. I'm gonna allow about 30 seconds for folks. You should see a poll question popped up on your screen. Just which of the following best describes you? You can choose as many of these options that are relevant to you. And I'll just leave this open for a minute and mute because someone's making a loud pizza. All right, a couple more seconds. I love to see these come in live, but I'm going to share the results with you all now. We've got half of the folks in the room nearly that work in human services or housing. A good portion of elected or appointed officials here, lots of city staff members, lots of advocates in the room, which is lovely. Residents in the Snoqualmie Valley. This is a nice, diverse group of folks, and I think that will really contribute to the breadth of the conversation. And we just want to offer the chat box, of course, throughout the workshop. Utilize it, bring your input, any questions that you have. We'd love to have an opportunity to have a broader discussion as we move forward. I have a couple more poll questions before we advance. Okay. Still getting this. So there's 3 questions in this next poll. This is a little bit about your background. So how comfortable do you feel when you're talking about local or regional affordable housing needs? We've got a scale there, just select whatever feels right to you. How familiar are you with the programs and tools that are being used in the Snoqualmie Valley that relate to affordable housing production and preservation? And do you or someone in your life, yourself, a family member, a friend, a coworker, someone you work with, struggle to afford affordable housing in the Snoqualmie Valley? You've got multiple choices there. You don't have to answer that question if you would prefer not to. It is helpful for us to view those results. I'll give it about 20 more seconds until we share the results out as a broader group. All right, folks, I'm going to end the poll so that we can all see the results here. Okay. Lots of folks feeling moderately comfortable. Some brave enough to say extremely, and some brave enough to say not at all when it comes to comfort and talking about local and regional affordable housing needs. It's a good spread. Okay. And a lot that feel like they've got a lot to gain, hopefully, tonight from this workshop as pertains to Snoqualmie Valley affordable housing policies and programs. And then quite a few folks, 62%, know someone, have someone in their life that struggles to afford housing in the Snoqualmie Valley. Thank you so much. Super helpful. All right. Okay, so what do we mean when we say affordable housing? Well, Marty alluded to this. HUD defines affordability based on a household's gross income. So when a resident or a household is spending 30% of their gross income or less on all housing related costs, that home is considered affordable. And by housing related costs, I mean rent, mortgage, HOA dues, utilities, any administrative fees associated with a rental. All of that is webbed up in the housing costs brackets. So unfortunately, we have a significant number of local folks in Snoqualmie Valley who are considered cost burdened. That means they're paying more than 30% of their gross monthly income for housing. And an even deeper need is among those who are severely cost burdened or paying more than half of their income for housing. So why does this matter? Why is this an important metric that we use? Well, when a family or an individual is spending more than 30% of their income towards housing costs, they are far less likely to navigate unexpected expenses that might come up. So we're talking about car repairs, health challenges, job loss, the economic downturn that COVID has presented, all those very unexpected challenges that come up. They're less likely to be able to invest in the local economy as they have less disposable income to work with. And this has major implications on funding for essential services that we all depend on, which really rely heavily on sales and property tax. So in this picture here, you're seeing Pickering Court in Snoqualmie. This is a King County Housing Authority property, 30 units, and they range in size from 1 to 3 bedrooms. This is subsidized housing, so the rent is set at 30% of a household's income. And currently there are around 130 households that are on the waiting list for these homes. And From conversations with King County, it appears, I mean, it varies of course, but folks live in these homes for a really long time. They're hard to get into. You stay on a list for years and years before you're offered a unit. And so those folks on the wait list probably have a decent wait ahead of them before they're offered a unit, because folks don't move out of their housing when it's maintained at an affordable level. So let's paint a picture of who is struggling with housing costs. Well, many different types of households struggle to maintain stable housing. People that we count on to teach our children, prepare and serve our food, to plow our streets, get us to and from our destinations safely, and longtime community members, among so many others. So every household listed here would be eligible for some sort of affordable housing if supply were plentifully available. And that form would depend on their income tier. So there's multiple compositions of households here. This data is from 2017, so you can expect that wages have been adjusted with the 3 years that have passed since this data was collected, but it gives you a clear picture of folks from very different backgrounds can be eligible for what we call affordable housing. And when we take a close look at folks who are cost burdened, cost burden data, when we disaggregate it by race, we see very clear disparities. The vision that we're all working towards in our sector is a future where these numbers are at 0%, where no one is experiencing cost burden. However, we really have to pay attention to the racial disparities and prioritize actions that reverse those without delay urgently. Reducing the number of households experiencing cost burden is a key target for many coalitions, for many community members, task forces, such as the Regional Affordable Housing Task Force, which laid out a comprehensive 5-year action plan to address regional housing need. That laid out strategies, and they're being forwarded by a body called the Affordable Housing Committee, stewarding that work, and the 2019 progress report with an update on work that's been done to reduce cost burden and increase affordable housing supply across the county is out now. And we'll be sharing that report in a follow-up email for you all to scour when you are able. Sorry, my advancing button keeps going away. Here we go. Okay, so obviously we have to reckon with the fact that our government has played an active role in increasing access to opportunity, ownership, primarily home ownership for some, and while restricting access for all others. And we're talking in particular members of the Black community, the Indigenous community, and just generally the communities of color that comprise our county and our nation. So the government actively prevented anyone who was not white from accessing housing in large swaths of the nation, including within the Snoqualmie Valley, which is our focus of the evening. And as ownership is our primary wealth generating tool in this country, we can surmise that those gaps that we see in wealth among white households and Black, Indigenous, and people of color households is not by accident, but is by design. And so if you haven't read Richard Rothstein's book, The Color of Law, I'd strongly urge it and recommend that you pick up a copy. But if you're looking for a quick way to get a primer on government involvement in housing segregation, you're going to receive a link to a recording of a presentation Mr. Rothstein did for our virtual 2020 Affordable Housing Week kickoff in the follow-up email. And it's a really important topic for folks to learn more about. And the recording offers a really great opportunity to engage with this content from the comfort of wherever you are. So now we're going to look at some of the programs and tools used to meet the housing needs of households across the income strata. The affordable housing world is just chock full of acronyms. So I want to call out a very important one right away that Marty mentioned, and you can see it multiple times on this slide, and that's AMI, or the Area Median Income. Across King County, the area median income for a family of 4 is $113,300. And I just wanted to lay the groundwork for that there because it is extremely high. And our affordable housing is based on an area median income standard. So this chart here from the Regional Affordable Housing Task Force that I mentioned earlier, it's got a lot of information captured on it, but one really critical thing to know is that the households here in this 0 to 30% AMI range will likely require ongoing rental subsidies to ensure that they are not cost burdened and that they can remain stably housed. The market just doesn't naturally reach these folks, and no jurisdiction across King County is currently meeting the need for affordable housing for folks in this 0 to 50% income tier. So let's look at some other options here. As you see this LIHTC, this is LIHTC, or the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. This is the biggest affordable housing program in the country, and it's operated by the IRS. It offers a credit against federal income taxes in exchange for investments in affordable housing. And then you can see here also Section 8 vouchers administered by HUD. Housing choice vouchers allow people to rent on the private market at 30% of their income, while HUD covers the remaining monthly rental balance. This is all based on the fair market rate rent for the zip code that the folks are living in and the size of their family. There's also project-based subsidies, which offset those rent costs for an entire building. So it's not just an individual voucher. Moving up further, so pretty much from this middle income area, something that's commonly referred to as workforce housing, which is a bit of a misnomer because we know that many people who are extremely low income are gainfully employed and are just not making a wage that gets them up into the middle or upper rung of the income strata. But we see this MFTE. This is a multifamily tax exemption program, and it offers a local tax incentive to private developers who build affordable units alongside their market rate projects. So essentially there's a set aside of certain number of units that need to be deemed affordable, and the local jurisdictions get to set the standards of what that affordability standard is, ensuring that developers utilize the program and at least some units are produced. And then moving further up the scale, up here, 80 to 120% of the area median income, programs that offer affordable home ownership are a great option for folks in this income range. So we've got folks, Patrick from Habitat for Humanity that's going to be speaking later. Habitat, those land trust models for sustained affordable home ownership are really key. A primary barrier to bringing these to scale is that land is exorbitantly expensive in King County, and we have regional and local efforts to reduce the cost of land that is considered underutilized or surplus. And voters approved King County Charter Amendment 2, which would allow the county to dispatch land owned by the county for a reduced cost, or to donate the land outright for the purposes of affordable housing development, which is phenomenal. And then finally, we also have this up in this rung in the 80 to 120% AMI, first-time home buyer resources. So we have down payment assistance programs that are administered by the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, among others. They recently raised their income eligibility to $145,000 per household, and the typical down payment assistance loan rate, I think, is about $10,000. So there's a lot of content here. You're going to be able to look at these slides at your free time and dig in. I know that it's quite a lot to look at. So who provides affordable housing? Well, we've mentioned King County Housing Authority. They have operations in the Snoqualmie Valley. Nonprofit housing providers also have areas in East King County that they provide affordable homes. Social service organizations, public agencies, and of course the private market, which is a really critical piece of the puzzle. And this slide comes courtesy of the Puget Sound Regional Council, or PSRC. PSRC is the regional authority that develops a planning framework for regions and local jurisdictions. And PSRC recently adopted Vision 2050, which acts as the plan to guide growth through the year 2050. So what are we looking at here? This is a jobs to housing ratio, and it compares the number of jobs in relation to the number of housing units in each area. A disclaimer again, we are looking at older data here, and we are experiencing an unprecedented job loss in our region, and obviously broadly in the state and the country at large due to the pandemic. And it's hit extremely low income folks and very low income folks incredibly hard, the greatest brunt there. And pre-COVID, we really did have strong job growth, and it led to a surge in demand for housing. So there's just not a one-to-one relationship between jobs and needed housing units in any given year. And the data shows that while housing production has picked up substantially since a low in 2011, the development of new housing has not kept pace with job growth and was just approaching the previous recession levels of production pre-COVID. So the overall piece to take away is since 2010, nearly 4 jobs for every new housing unit were created countywide. And additionally, East King County, largely due to the major employers headquartered in the area, mostly in that Redmond-Bellevue area, you get swallowed up by all of East County, has the second largest divide of 1.6 jobs per housing unit. Again, the economic impact of COVID-19 hasn't yet been fully realized, so we're holding that in mind as we look at this data from 2017. Although incomes in Washington were growing faster than average, they are not keeping pace with growing rents. Incomes have recovered from the recession pre-COVID, and earned incomes are growing even at the lower end, even at this lower end. But fixed incomes, so that's retirement or disability income, Social Security, at the best grow at the rate of general inflation, which is typically 1 to 2%, and well below the average 5% rent inflation that we have seen recently in Washington state. So just incomes and rental increases are just not keeping pace with one another as well. And here's one of those really big number slides. Marty mentioned, hundreds of thousands of units, and city in King County, and in fact, all over the country, we don't have enough affordable housing. That's the reality that we're dealing with. Of the Regional Affordable Housing Task Force was defining the regional need to a number and analyzing many factors pertaining to housing landed that task force on these numbers. And I know our friend from Arch will provide a breakdown of some of these related to Snoqualmie Valley in a minute, but here's the main theme. We need 244,000 affordable homes by 2040 to ensure that no low-income household is cost burdened. And again, rewind back to the cost burden, why it's important, why folks need to be in housing that is affordable to them, that is not burdening them, so that they can have a level of stability, navigate emergencies that come up, and also stimulate the local economy. So the Regional Affordable Housing Task Force recommends 44,000 units of affordable housing be produced within the next 5 years, including building, preserving affordable units that are already on the market, preserving complexes that could be purchased and possibly by housing authorities or other entities to retain affordability, and also subsidizing units directly. So the need is great, and it is easy to feel disheartened, but we do have motivated and committed communities across the county, and that includes in the Snoqualmie Valley. So please don't let this massive number sink your hopes. With the right tools utilized in the right environments, we can continue to keep pushing to meet the housing needs of all King County residents. So stay persistent. And so this is a very word-heavy slide as well. It's not an exhaustive list of all the tools that are available to increase the number of affordable homes for residents and local communities. All the items with the asterisks, or all the items in bold, sorry, are being utilized by one or more of the Snoqualmie Valley cities as of today. And a quick look at these, this right now is an education and community engagement opportunity. And we've got folks from multiple jurisdictions in the Snoqualmie Valley that are here tonight. So way to go, way to be. We have other options here: impact exemptions, reduced parking requirements where it makes sense, where there's access to transit, or there's an opportunity to have a more walkable existence, essentially walkable communities. Development agreements where a city is able to come to an agreement with a developer and say, this is what we need from you and this is what we can provide. These abbreviations here, the accessory dwelling units and the detached accessory dwelling units. So this is like a backyard cottage. This is maybe like a basement apartment and a attic apartment, something that's within your existing dwelling. And that creates, double the amount of housing options in your home. If you're a homeowner, potentially you want to, move into a backyard cottage and allow your family to move into the main unit, or possibly rent out one or the other. It's a great option for some folks. And so I don't want to spend too much time on these. I want to turn things over to Mike Stanger, who's a senior planner with Arch. And Mike is going to get us really better acquainted with that organization, the services that they provide, and the impact of their work with member cities. on the east side of King County. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Great, I'm here. Thanks, Mallory. Good to see some of you all again, and happy to have a chance to talk to city folks in the Snoqualmie Valley, some of whom I have spoken with on occasion, but happy to strike up a conversation with you if you're interested in ARCH in the future or any kind of support on an advisory basis if you prefer. Because as you can see on this map, this draws the boundaries of what we consider our ARCH sphere of influence. The map's a little dated in that some of the cities have annexed land around them, like Kirkland, for instance, and maybe Snoqualmie, North Bend, others have done the same. But the point is that Duval, Carnation, Snoqualmie, North Bend have something of an open invitation to consider joining ARCH if at a time that's appropriate for you. It would have to go through a process with our other cities as well, but it's why I think that it's really appropriate for you to learn a little bit more about what ARCH does. So ARCH stands for a Regional Coalition for Housing, and we were created in 1992, actually partly in response to the state's adoption of the Growth Management Act. Because of the regional nature of housing markets, city and business leaders in Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland became convinced that the interlocal collaboration was the best way to address the affordable housing needs of their community and also to handle the new planning requirements for local governments that came through the Growth Management Act. So they wanted to combine resources in order to enable them to share staff with specialized housing expertise, to collaborate on plans and strategies so there would be some coordination across the subregion, and also to combine their funding resources that were limited but could leverage greater investments in housing production preservation from other funding sources. So the those cities, along with King County, formed ARCH with what's known as an interlocal agreement. And that determines our mission and our governance structure and so forth. So ARCH is not formally incorporated. We're not a separate agency. We're just kind of this formally informal program. And it's a voluntary program. So members can join or leave at their own choosing. But when they are members, they make a commitment to help support the administration costs of the program through prorated dues. And then we have a trust fund, which the contributions, cash contributions to that are voluntary, but I'll talk more about that later. So next slide, please. So this depicts how ARCH is set up administratively and for governance. The city councils send their chief executives, city managers or mayors, to executive board, which is kind of a joint city manager to our staff, if you will. And they also, the exec board also appoints advisory board for diverse citizens and diverse backgrounds to advise us on the exec board on mainly on how to allocate the trust fund. The city of Bellevue contributes all of our back office support. So they cut our paychecks, they support our information services and so forth. But our office is actually in downtown Redmond to reinforce the fact that we're not tied to any one city, that we're equally supportive of all of our members. And then we have 7 permanent staff people, and we think of ourselves as extensions of the city staff. So whatever city we're working with or serving at on a given project. For instance, if, just to use myself as an example, if Redmond needs a new land use covenant for new development, then I'll write that. I'll work with the developer and the staff and write that covenant and get it recorded as if I'm a City of Redmond employee. Or Botha wants help rewriting their codes on accessory dwelling units or missing middle housing, then I'll be part of that team. Or Sammamish wants a presentation on their affordable housing needs, then I'll collaborate with their staff to make that presentation. But in all those cases, I'll also bring the examples and perspectives, experience from the other cities across East King County. The most important point I want to make out of this slide, though, is that ARCH is not the staff, that it's the or the exec board might say, it's really all of our members working jointly and sharing our resources. So next, please. This list is kind of a simplified version of or overview of the various things that we do with and for our members. Much of our day-to-day work is really helping one city at a time working to achieve their objectives. So we're, as I said, we're basically staff people. We're not advocates for affordable housing the way HDC is, for example. But we support staff, planning commissions, city councils when they're doing their comp plan updates. We follow those up with housing strategies and plans. And as the cities take action to adopt new programs and dedicate funding and so forth, then we implement those programs. Next, please. So I did a little math work on recent data on the affordability of the housing supply across your cities and compared that to our ARCH cities combined. There's some variation across the Snoqualmie Valley, but the key thing that I want to draw your attention to is to the countywide demand. So presently, the countywide planning policies say that each city should plan for housing that addresses the housing needs of each of these 3 economic segments, if you will, in proportion to the county-wide need. So ideally, in one form or another, each community would have a plan that would provide 14% of its housing units for very low income households, and 11% for low income and so forth. And all of us are well below that. Now you may see that that in moderate income levels or even low income levels that the supply looks pretty good compared to the demand. But another thing underlying this is that in a free market housing, we have a tendency to pay less than we can afford for housing if we have more money, and that results in a lot of people with less money paying more than they can afford. And so the housing needs at these lower income levels is really much greater than those numbers and the countywide demand even show. And that's what results in those cost burden numbers that Mallory showed earlier. Next, please. Okay. So moving on to the strategies then, to characterize the overriding strategies common across our most active cities, I would list these 4 things. We work on a combination of preserving existing affordable units as well as getting new affordable housing produced. We make a great effort to use our trust fund to leverage it, as well as public land, fee waivers, other resources that can leverage investment from public and private sources. We use land use regulations and MFTE, the tax incentive, to leverage market activity to set aside affordable units. And the key mechanism to keep them affordable for the long term is legal covenants on the land. Next. I think people, especially in local governments in the Snoqualmie Valley, would be really interested in how we use land use regulations and MFTE. Basically, the overriding principle here is that when our governments can increase the value of developable land by allowing them to allowing developers or landowners to more housing on them, or reduce their costs, for example, by reducing the amount of parking that's required, then the cities, through these covenants, have the ability to claw, if you will, some of that value in the form of affordable housing units that are set aside for long-term affordability. Let's go to the next slide then. Through those tools, we've already able to create or help create over 2,600 affordable units of various income levels, including those that are under construction. And this table shows the kind of divide between they're both home ownership and rental housing. Next. For, I mentioned the trust fund. Those contributions from our members are voluntary, and they do fluctuate from year to year, which because we don't have a dedicated source for that. A lot of it comes from the city's general funds. Some of it comes from community development block grant monies, and it doesn't grow automatically with the need. But we try to supplement that, as I mentioned, with other valuable sources, such as if cities have surplus land that they can contribute to a project, or fee waivers or other things. And that's used to leverage other sources. And in the next slide, you'll see that it's been effective to the point of about a 10-to-1 ratio over the years. Total over our 30-something year period, 27-year period has been about 9-to-1, but more recently we've done a little bit better. And then this shows, the next slide shows the number of units by affordability level. We really tried to get down in the low and very low income level units where as much as we can. The other public sources usually start targeting at 60% and below. So that's why you see the numbers heavily weighted from 60%, 50%, 30%, so forth. And I think that's the end of my slides. But as I said, I am more than happy to, if you'd like, anybody in your cities would like to reach out for more information about how Arch works, or how we're able to do what we do, how we work with our cities, be more than happy to do that.
Thanks so much, Mike. Thanks for helping us get to know Arch, all the services that you provide member cities, and the impact that you've had on the East Side. It's much appreciated. So shifting gears a bit, we're grateful to have representatives from King County here with us tonight, and I'd like to turn it over to Valerie Kendall in working with the Housing and Homelessness and Community Development Division of King County Department of Community and Human Services, which is a mouthful, and I didn't even put your title in there, so that would have been more words. Valerie's going to provide some background on the county's affordable housing and shelter efforts in the Snoqualmie Valley, and I will turn it over to you, Valerie, if you're able to unmute.
Hi, before I hop into these, I just want to say thank you very much, Mallory. I had a whole little speech written, but I'm going to actually skip that in the interest of time so we can move on to the discussion. But I just wanted to mention, I'm a planning special projects manager. I was the lead author on the 5-year King County Consortium Consolidated Housing and Community Development Plan, which is the funding plan for federal grants. One of those grants is the CDBG funds, which Mike Stenger mentioned as being a source for Arch. Also on the call tonight, we have Sonari Marshall. She's my supervisor. I just like to say that because with our ages, sometimes people get us mixed up. And we have Isaac Horwath, and he is working with Mallory on the current funding contract to support the work that you're doing right now. One more tidbit I just wanted to kind of add, that goal 1 of the Regional Affordable Housing Task Force Action Plan is sub-regional collaboration. So that ties into the introduction that Marty did, really talking about the Regional Affordable Housing Task Force, and some of the slides Mallory showed us with the housing need and that 244,000 units that we're looking to bring online by 2040. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk about 2 recent project awards that King County has made in the Snoqualmie Valley area. This is the Cascade Apartments in North Bend. This is an example of preservation. This was, I'm going to have to look at my notes because this funding program predates me, which is saying something. This was a USDA rural development in 1968. It received renewals, but then we did have word that it was at risk of not being preserved. So King County stepped in and awarded $2 million. That's relatively high for a 28-unit apartment building. This project serves vulnerable seniors and people with disabilities. And one of our policies is to not lose affordable housing assets that we have in the community. So King County stepped in and committed $2 million for this. It has an elevator and it's well located for serving seniors. So that's one of our priorities at King County. This looks like a really great project. And then the other award we made was $200,000 to the Snoqualmie Valley Shelter to rehabilitate their shelter. And this work is currently underway. So I know a lot of you are aware that King County funds a number of shelters. It's really important work, and it's the entry point for folks experiencing homelessness to get into permanent housing. So we were really pleased to fund this. Those basically are my slides. I didn't want to spend a lot of time talking so that we could kind of get back to the topic and do some exchanges, but I'll be happy to field questions on either one of these projects when we get into the discussion portion. So thank you, Mallory. Thank you, Marty, very much.
Thank you so much, Valerie. So if you're able to stick around, we're going to have some time in about 10 minutes to have a broader discussion, and please put your questions, any points of clarification in the chat box. I know I can see it lighting up, which is great. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're really honored to pass things over to one of our affordable home ownership members of HDC. That's Habitat for Humanity, Seattle King County. It's the regional affiliate serving households in King and Kittitas counties. HDC really sees affordable home ownership as the most important piece of the puzzle, such an important piece of the puzzle when it comes to affordable housing. And we're so grateful for the work of Habitat for Humanity. So I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Sullivan, their Director of Real Estate Development, and joining us tonight. It's going to go over Habitat's work in Snoqualmie Valley region, or what they're doing to increase affordable home ownership opportunities for low and middle income folks. And Patrick, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Mallory, and thanks HDC, and thanks for everyone for joining and giving me an opportunity to share some of the work we're doing. So I just want to give an overview of Habitat and then an overview of a project we have going at the moment in North Bend. So our local affiliate has been around since 1986, and just to keep things short and not just read everything, but we've operated in over 720 homes in the county, and we help thousands of people on a yearly basis through our program, whether that's through referrals or through engaging them in our program to become homeowners eventually. We also have a 99% success rate of keeping families in our homes. So we do have a very high success rate of being very careful with how we bring people on into the program and ensure that they're able to afford their homes that they buy and that they stay in them. We did recently just merge with Kittitas County in a sort of a strategic move for us in order to increase our footprint for service area into more rural areas such as the Snoqualmie Valley. Here's just a brief overview of the work that we've done in the past. So we do have a concentration around the Seattle area, but it is a strategic initiative of ours to continue to push further east into King County and to hit areas like Snoqualmie and North Bend. So we do have 185 projects currently in our pipeline, and we do have a goal of reaching 1,000 units by 2025. Next slide, please. Thanks. So I have our own housing continuum slide as well. And this is really just to draw attention to where Habitat sits in the housing continuum as a affordable home ownership program. So a lot of the supporting services and ongoing services or ongoing subsidies do tend to cater a bit more towards emergency shelter, transitional housing, affordable rentals. And we have this sort of niche area in affordable housing, affordable home ownership, where we really fall. On the right-hand side, and this kind of touches on the project in North Bend, the average house is looking around $650,000, and our families below 80% AMI, the max they would be able to afford is $300,000. So very similar to the other presenters, the gap between what the market rate is and what is affordable is it's enormous. As far as the work that we do, so we are pretty proud of our ability to offer a full breadth of development services, and that starts with land acquisition, property development, through all of the design and permitting processes and construction services. We have a pretty comprehensive team that vets all of our homeowners and selection and goes through the selection process. And we do a targeted and tiered approach. So if we have a development in North Bend, we spend the first 3 to 6 months trying to find homeowners or home buyers in the community before we start looking outside of the community. So we are pretty careful with that. We facilitate the sale of homes, so working with banks to facilitate a mortgage. And we go through ongoing program and funding compliance whenever we work with state, federal, city funding. We ensure that all of the funding requirements are, typically we have to report annually on them. We make sure that everything is up to speed. We also perform all repairs in the event that homeowners have a leak in their roof or something needs to be repaired. As typically we are the general contractor, we do return to fix anything. We also, all of our developments are overseen with either an HOA or a condo association. So we are in constant we're constantly appraised of what's going on within the development to ensure that all of the regulations are maintained. Next slide, please. So like I said before, we are exclusively home ownership, and we do serve first-time home buyers. We utilize a land trust program, and this is something that we also are really keen on, and we think it sets us apart from other affordable providers. And all of our properties are held in a land trust, and the key for that is that it's the affordability is set and maintained in perpetuity. So the initial home sale price is fixed, and it does appreciate at a 1.5% yearly. So there is equity gain in addition to just gain on the principal. There's equity gain through interest. But what that allows us to do is it will always maintain affordability. So someone who purchases at 50% today and sells in 20 years will still be in the bracket of the 50% when we consider inflation. So it is a mechanism that keeps our units affordable indefinitely. We buy down that initial home price with a one-time subsidy. So I know we just heard about King County funding. One of our funders may be King County on any number of projects, and that will help to buy down that mortgage. And then again, it will help to maintain that affordability forever. We do serve buyers under 80% AMI. Each of our developments can have special restrictions based on an agreement with the city or a special affordability agreement, but they're always under 80. Sometimes they're under 60, under 50, but that's sort of our missing middle is where we're focused. We also have a sweat equity component, so all of our homeowners and families do put in hours on their own homes. It's usually 250 hours of work, self-help labor, building their own homes. We also utilize volunteer labor as another mechanism to keep that initial sale price down by taking some of the higher cost trades like carpentry and siding. And by bringing in volunteer labor, we again can in theory, buy down that cost of the initial mortgage and then keep the price affordable. And then, like I said, our HOAs and condos, we help form them and maintain them. As far as our owner demographics, we do, and I was saying we serve under 80, but across our portfolio, we have an average of 49% area median income. 87% of our buyers do retain their homes, and of the 13 that do sell, half of those go on to the open market. And that's a success story for us, and we are happy to see people who build equity through ownership, and then maybe they increase equity in a higher paying job or whatever it might be, but they're able to take the equity that they've put into the property and continue their economic success. 13 years is the average length of our home ownership at the moment, and we are pretty young, and we are putting on a number of new units in the last 5 years. So these numbers are going to start changing rapidly. And our racial breakdown of home owners, we have about 60% people of color. And I've touched on this already, but the key for us through the home ownership is really that it's about intergenerational wealth building. This is a mechanism, it's an opportunity for people to start building wealth in a way that is oftentimes out of reach for people who are earning low incomes. That allows them to break the cycle of poverty, of living in poverty housing, creating that equity, giving an opportunity for them to then go on and pass that equity down to their children or children's children. It also, another big one is housing stability, and a lot of good things that we know come from housing stability. So those are really the three key areas that we focus on, and when we think about what does home ownership mean for our habitat buyers. And in our portfolio, the average equity earned has been $80,000. So over time, that money you do see a great value earned over time. And then just briefly on our North Bend property. So this has been a really successful project to date. I think I saw that Jamie from the city is on as well. I think we're maybe 2 months out from permits, maybe 3. So we are expecting to break ground early next year. It's a really nice lot right downtown. It's about just shy of 14,000 square feet. There was one single family residence on it at the moment. And through our development, we'll be building 7 townhouses across two buildings. Here's sort of a plan view of the development. So this won't be the correct coordinates, but if we think of it as north and south, the top building in the north has 3 units. The unit on the far left is ADA accessible, so it has a ramp for anyone needing one. And the building in the south has 4 units. They're all 2 levels, about 1,250 square feet, 3-bed, 1.5 baths. Here are some renderings to give you an idea of really how it will shape up. There are a lot of things we like about the project. We think the housing size is excellent. We think the location is really prime, and it's been a very exciting project to be working on. So a few things, some of the challenges, and then what there also are opportunities to partner. And we've already heard a bit about these from other presenters. So one of the things we did use was a development agreement with the city of North Bend. And this was sort of laying out, so not to get into too specifics, but in order to develop in North Bend at the moment, you need a sewer concurrency agreement with the city, basically where they allow you to build, and there were restrictions on that. And so we did have to sit down with the city and present our proposal. And we have a feeling that because it was an affordable development, they had sort of kept a number of those units in reserve so that they could release them for special projects like this. So we did go through a development agreement with the city that we've also had a reduction in what we would typically provide for in parking. So we do provide 1 on-site parking stall per unit. And then we do provide 7 off-site on-street parking. But the ability to have just 1 on-site gives us obviously the room to have 7 units. If we had to do 2 units, 2 parking stalls on the site, we wouldn't be able to create 7 units. Street improvements are always a real challenge. If that means putting in a new street or a sewer extension, that's a big hurdle for an affordable developer like Habitat or any developer. So those are things that we've been working pretty closely with North Bend, trying to figure out what do they need and what can we provide and where's the balance. Utilities are also always a big cost driver and a big unknown. So partnering with PSE and trying to figure out how do we bring power into the development in a way that we can afford, that also meets their needs. Impact fees, this is one that we had a lot of success working with North Bend. We did get a nice reduction in impact fees through our development agreement with the city, where they waived 50% of the typical development fees. Land cost, again, that's the biggest hurdle. We've heard Marty say that in the beginning, land cost and scarcity of land. So any opportunities we have to find land, we do tend to maximize the density because it's a rare opportunity to get a piece of land, and would feel like a loss to not maximize its capacity. And then density allowances. This is a really big one. We have a project in Burien at the moment where it's another affordable project program with the city development agreement where we're asking to increase the density, not through ADUs or DADUs, but through another affordable program. And that's really key for us as developers is we can afford market rate land if we have the ability to build more density on it in order to spread that cost around. I think that's all I have.
Big thank you, Patrick, to you and the Habitat team for all that you do. And so grateful and excited to see the North Bend project break ground and get folks moving in. I saw the chat box lighting up, so people want to get connected with you and figure out how they can connect folks to those beautiful townhomes. So thanks for being here. We're going to shift again into an overview of one of the tools that the HDC team has created, and it's available to you. These are affordable housing policy snapshots, and they give a picture of the demographics of a jurisdiction, the conditions as far as affordability goes, cost burden numbers, and further the commitments within each jurisdiction's housing element, which is a component of the comprehensive plan that the city develops. Further down here, we've got some enacted policies and codes. So this is the city of Snoqualmie, as you can see. We've created these documents we're in the process of creating them for every jurisdiction within King County. And one of the greatest parts of these is that the second page is filled with an acronym glossary. So you swim in acronyms. There's a lot to suss through, but we want to make this accessible and easy to digest for folks. So these are available on our website. We're going to send you a link to them. I think we've got Snoqualmie here. I know North Bend is up on our website. Duval should also be, and Incarnation is so close to being published. So stay tuned for that. We'll send you a link to these snapshots in the follow-up email. And we really urge you to take a look at these. Get to know, what commitments and goals your local jurisdiction has set out, and also where opportunities for action, for more work to be done to really beef up this policies section to see local policies enacted. And just want to highlight that a tool that works in Seattle is not a tool that works in Snoqualmie, and that it is important to right size the toolbox according to the needs of the local community. And I saw some comments in the chat box around parking reductions. Parking reductions make a lot of sense in high capacity transit corridors where you have access to frequent transit and you don't really have to rely on those single occupancy vehicle cars, but that doesn't really make sense in a city that is not served by high capacity transit. So we're encouraging local jurisdictions, residents in the community to assess, what are the menu of options that we could be encouraging our local elected officials to consider, our city staff to consider, what are they all already talking about, and what is appropriate for our community, because it's just not a one size fits all. You don't bring a hammer to fix a crack in your windshield, and you need to have the right tools to meet your local jurisdiction's needs. So I'm grateful that we had Patrick here from Habitat, because I think affordable homeownership is probably a really salient topic in the Snoqualmie Valley. I know that homeownership is out of reach for a lot of folks in King County, but as that slide showed about the average cost of a home, it's quite expensive. So whatever we can do to get people into that opportunity to build intergenerational wealth, but also just to get into rental housing that is affordable to them. So again, we'll share these links to these in the follow-up, and just want to give a final opportunity to encourage you all to sign up for alerts from your city council, from your planning commission. There should be some way to subscribe to alerts when council agendas come out. Stay tuned for city comprehensive plan updates, which are a guide your city uses to accommodate growth. That Vision 2050 document that I mentioned is kind of the kickoff. It's a big regional plan for counties that essentially have to, underneath that framework, create the individual jurisdictions, create their own comprehensive plans. And those full-blown comprehensive plan updates, I think, are due by 2024. So the process is getting started. Please stay tuned and informed on what is happening locally. We also encourage you to subscribe to organizational newsletters to keep you looped into what's happening around affordable housing. HDC sends one out every Tuesday, and it's related to King County affordable housing news. We'll link that to you as well in the follow-up. We have a reading list, a lot of documents, but also some great books to dig into if you want to learn more. We really encourage you to just share your vision for a community where all are welcome and all have access to stable housing with those around you and also those who represent you. And I'm going to turn off the screen share because I really want to see your bright faces. I'd like us to just kind of digest all this information together. I know Celia's been monitoring the chat, and I think there were some questions for our presenters. And I'm also going to plug the link for the workshop survey in the chat box. Really encourage you to fill out that survey and let us know what you thought about tonight. And yeah, just kick it off. I want to allow Celia to share up some questions that might have come up in the chat.
There was one. How do we go about helping people apply for Habitat housing coming into North Bend?
Yeah, so certainly if I can connect with them, what I would do is put them in touch with our family services department, and there's a whole sort of mechanism in place to get them enrolled and start going through the process. So it's very simple, just as long as we can connect.
Mm-hmm. And there were a couple of specific questions for you. And so maybe you can write your email in the chat and make that easy for people to connect with you.
Sure.
Yes. Valerie answered the question about the place in North Bend acquired stock of King County Housing. It's Mount Si Senior Center. And I think, let's see, and then Cindy had a question, will King County have a shallow rent program so families can rent throughout their communities? So they're wondering if there's someone on the call who could answer that. Valerie, maybe is that one you would be able to address?
I've heard conversations about a shallow rent program using some of the Vets and Senior Human Services levy. I don't know what the status of that is, but I just want to say there's always a little bit of tension around the need and the available resources. So basically rent buy down programs is something in our things that King County is talking about. I can't speak to a timeline around implementation. But good question.
Yeah. And I think that if somebody would like to just unmute and ask a question, that would be fine too. At this point, we're a slightly smaller group.
Samatha, do you want to jump in? I saw your question up in the chat box if you're still here. Okay, so I don't know if Samatha is still here, but they were asking about, I think the 1923, House Bill 1923, that commerce grants for housing action plans and looking at residential density. Anybody from the jurisdictions here tonight, is that something that you pursued? Did you get awarded any of those commerce grants? That was a question from Samatha.
Not for Snoqualmie, no, we didn't pursue it, nor would we have gotten it.
Thanks, Mark.
Do you mind if I ask a quick question really quick? Is anybody able to speak to the House Bill 1406? I do believe that Snoqualmie is involved in that, and I know we have a ton of meetings with Snoqualmie and they're very good to us, but I've never really understood how 1406 works and the benefits that could come to social service agencies through that.
Well, first,
Hey,
Snoqualmie,
Mark.
we could talk offline. Yes, the answer is
Okay.
yes, but it's not much money. It's about $24,000 a year. Needs to accumulate. We took advantage of the half share. We chose at that time not to enact an additional sales and use tax to qualify for the full share. Our plan under 1406 is to let those accumulate until we have an option that has benefit locally. As far as detail of what that project could be, or to pre-discuss it, you have my number. We could talk anytime.
Okay, thank you.
This is Jamie from North Bend. For the House Bill 1923, the city did receive a $50,000 grant. It's not for a housing action plan, but we're doing some form-based code and some missing middle work. And so we're kind of in the thick of that right now. And then Patrick, I think it was House Bill 1406 as part of our development agreement with Habitat for Humanity. We said that our first annual collection that we committed to give it to Habitat, back to Habitat. And it was, I think our total was around, 20,000 or something like that.
And along those lines, I'll pre-answer a potential question. We also recently enacted an ordinance for House Bill 1590 to reserve our sales and use tax credit, which is substantially more money annually than the 1406 money. And same category, it'll accumulate faster, whether the city council and mayor decide to partner sub-regionally or accumulate for a project in Snoqualmie is yet to be determined. We haven't started to receive those funds. It's not off the presses, but it's also a substantial tool that we intend to use in the future.
I was just going to jump in. This is Laura Thomas from the City of Duval. We actually have Arch coming and giving a presentation this evening at our city council meeting in about 30 minutes. So I will be jumping off a little bit early, but we have 30 affordable housing units coming online over the next year. So we're looking at having them assist us. They're not able to bring us fully into their sphere of influence, but have agreed to probably like an hourly, a per hour contract. So we're excited about that. I think the one thing that probably needs to be discussed that wasn't is that it takes a lot of tools to bring in affordable housing to a community. And I think that my community struggles with ADUs and what they'll look like and compatibility, reducing parking, increasing density. And I think if we don't hit that hurdle correctly, then we're not going to be successful, at least within the city of Duval. And I think that the lack of transportation within our valley is going to hamper affordable housing in the future. We have one bus that comes in every 90 minutes, Monday through Friday, for a very limited amount of time. And that's a problem if you have people that cannot afford to have vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
There's another question. How are covenants and HOA-based restrictions put in place by developers originally, limiting the ability to increase the amount of affordable units? Stefan notes, my guess is that most will not allow additional dwelling units. Mallory, maybe you can speak to that.
Not at all. I would love to offer that up to somebody else. I'm sorry, I don't have a response to that one. Great question, though.
Any thoughts from folks on the call?
Any city staff members have to deal with that, where you have an existing HOA or a covenant on the land and you'd like to revisit and consider more units on the same parcel?
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact detail of the question, but CC&Rs are a private issue, don't deal with city regulations. But that said, if there are any existing CC&Rs that a private landowner and a homeowners association would like to discuss, change, modify, we're always a partner to that. We just don't play a role in that. Deed restrictions and so forth with development agreements, we do. So if the question means that, we have lots of experience with that. But as far as the CC&R restriction, by example, saying, you know, this development shall have 100 units max, that's a private matter enforced in the court.
Thanks for jumping in on that, Mark. I see one more in here from Cindy in regards to Duval's affordable housing. So, you know, where is the affordable housing going in Duval? And Cindy, if you want to unmute, if you want to expand on that or anything, please feel free to do so.
I just live in Duval. Oh, I live near Duval, so I'm just curious what street, what development is it?
So it's the rock at the ridge at Big Rock, which is right off of Big Rock Road. So where the roundabout is.
Yeah.
So just east of the Safeway. So there'll be a community center there that's private, and they'll be part of an association, and the units are dispersed. They're for sale units, and there's 30 of them.
Totals? Total?
Toll Brothers. Yes, Toll Brothers.
And those are going to be in the affordable prices, you mean?
30 of the units will not be at market rate.
Oh.
Yeah. If you have any questions, just send me an email. We're actually working on the restrictive covenant as I speak.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you just say, this is Keisha, that Toll Brothers is going to be participating with affordable housing?
Yes, as part
Really?
as part of our rezones, we do concomitant agreements to require 5 to 10% of affordable housing units, and as part of annexations. And that's been a longstanding policy with the city of Duval for about 15 years.
Oh, wow.
What price range?
I used to work with them at the escrow company that I used to work at. So
at
that's nice to hear.
80% of AMI.
So families in there, that price range could buy in that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not definitely, you know, exactly what we want. Obviously, we'd like to go lower, but we, you know, those were our first two projects that we negotiated. You know, as we move forward, we'll try to hit 50 to 60%, but this was our first toe in the water, and it's taken 15 years to make this project work.
Will the units look different, or will they be the
Nope.
same size?
They will look exactly the same. They're townhomes. The only difference will be internally. So, you know, won't have all of, I'll call it the, you know, it'll be more builder grade versus, you know, upgraded to, you know, marble or something like that.
Laura, how long is that gonna run? How long will they remain affordable?
Oh my gosh, I don't know how I did it, but 35 years.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was super excited because that's not what the agreement said. And then I said, can we bump it up? And they agreed.
That's fantastic.
Congratulations, get on that list.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, the first units will go on the market probably in the next 6 weeks. We're really at the end and just approving the covenant and the pricing.
So they'll just be marketed with all the other units. Right?
Yeah, it'll be marketed, but we're hoping that Arch will help us with our marketing long term and as they go up for sale, or I should say resale, and do the yearly checks.
Huh, nice.
Laura, that's great information. Would you mind putting your email in the chat as well? So if there's some
Sure.
follow-up questions, folks can contact you.
Yeah, thank you.
It looks like we're at time. So maybe Mallory, I think you have a couple of last minute things here.
Well, I just wanted to flag that the survey is in the chat box again, and I'm just going to pester you again in about 45 minutes with a follow-up email with some resources to dig into when you have time and another survey link because, wow, we would love to hear from you. We would really love to hear from you, and just gratitude to all of you for being here tonight, for taking an hour and a half out of your evening to join us when you could be doing a million other things. And I hope that there was a lot of value shared this evening and absorbed, and I'd love to stay connected. So you'll receive an email from me, and thank you all to the city staff members, to the residents, to all the folks that are on here today. It's just great to see faces and be able to convene in this very strange virtual world. So take good care. Thanks to our presenters as well, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Get some dinner and do what you need to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mallory.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.